Welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong with Josh and Sean. Content warning. Please note we make reference to a film depiction of sexual abuse during this episode. In this Christmas-themed episode, we talk about our dislike of the rampant commercialization of Christmas, our childhood memories of festive celebrations, including some harrowing experiences, and how we really feel about the music and songs of Wicked. Enjoy the ride.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. My name is Josh, and together with one of my exes and one of my best friends, Sean, that's Sean over there. Do you want to say hi, Sean?
Hi, Sean. Hello, Josh. That sounds like a real corny 1970s comedy bit or something.
So together with Sean, who doesn't know who he is, we host a podcast called Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. And it's, if you haven't watched the podcast before or listened to an episode, it's basically just two friends, two gay guys who used to be in a relationship, trying to put the worlds to right, trying to make sense of the world that we live in, which is sometimes baffling and terrifying and sometimes fun. I don't know. How are you, Sean? You just got back from holiday.
Yeah, I think we both look a little bit rosy-cheeked, and my nose is all red. It's because it's so cold outside.
It's not. You haven't. I thought maybe you'd caught a little too much sun on holiday or something.
No, it's from being out in the cold. And I was just trying to get back from Camden. If you don't know, if you're listening from other parts of the world, Camden is an inner city suburb or area or neighborhood. We don't really use the word suburb here, do we?
No, not really.
What do you call Camden? Camden is
an area of London. I suppose you could use suburb. I don't know.
That's weird, isn't it? Because like in Mexico City, you say barrio. And then in Brisbane, in Australia, like even if you lived in an inner city suburb, you would say, oh, what suburb do you live in? Oh, I live in West End, or I live in New Farm. That's your suburb. But in London, we don't really use that term unless you're referring to the sort of outer urban areas, like the suburban housing, that's the suburbs. But
yeah, we don't really use the word suburb. We just say what part of London you live in, which...
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was in the area of Camden because I went to visit our friends at the Third Estate, which is a vegan shoe store and ethical boutique. And they were having like a promotional day today. And so I went there to say hello. And another one of our mutual friends, Muriel, was there helping.
Oh, right. Lovely. Yeah, I really wanted to come today, but I was working. So, yeah, I do want to go and see them soon.
But then getting home from there, Hill and I went down to Camden to try and go to the Black Heart, which is a pub, like a metal music pub that has a vegan kitchen in it. And we went in and they were just like, we're too busy. We can't serve you. It's like, wow. We've got an hour left of food service and it's backed up.
This is, I think, the busiest sort of day pre-Christmas, isn't it? When everyone's out getting their gifts, getting their shopping, getting their sort of tasks done before Christmas. Because next weekend, there's one more weekend before Christmas, but I suppose people have a lot of social engagement and stuff.
By the time this comes out, there might be no more weekends before Christmas.
No, that's true. This comes out on the 24th, so yeah, it will be the day before. Which we have to talk about Christmas because you and I.
Well, we can get there, but first of all, so I couldn't get into this. I couldn't get into the pub to have food, so we went around the corner. There's a restaurant called Vegan Planet, and it's on Camden Parkway, right next door or two shops away from Long Dan.
Yeah,
Asian grocery store. And yeah, it was really nice. So we were having we wanted somewhere to have a celebratory meal because Hill just got a promotion at work. And so we were looking to go somewhere nice, but even that was busy. It was packed. We got in, but it was packed. But then to get a long story short.
To make a long story longer.
Yeah. After we needed to get out of there, transport was just chaotic. So the Camden Town Underground Station was shut. There were a lot of people stood outside, hundreds of people waiting.
Was it overcrowded, or do you know why it was shut?
I don't know, because it was shut when we walked past, and then an hour later after dinner, it was still closed. And so then we walked over to, there's a bus that goes from Parkway to Angel Islington, which is another neighborhood of London. And so we jumped on that bus, and as soon as we got on the bus, there's, you know, that noise the bus makes in London when they're going to make an announcement. It's like, it sounds like a Big Ben chime or a. Have you ever heard that on the bus?
I despise buses in London. I actually hate them. Yeah.
We got on this bus and it said, "Listen carefully. This bus is on diversion." And then that was it. It didn't say where it was going, why. It still said the destination was Angel Islington. So we say, okay, we'll stay on the bus. It was so cold on the bus. Mm-hmm. And it went all around that part of town. We even, after being on it for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, we went past Brecknock Road again, where the third estate was. We went there. We went everywhere. Eventually, and
you went around the houses, Sue.
Eventually, after a very, very excruciatingly long journey, it dropped us off at that big Sainsbury's in Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Just behind Chapel Market.
You probably could have walked quicker.
Well, yeah. And then we had to try and get another bus to get back from Angel down to where we live. And the buses said, the next bus is in 18 minutes, which is a very long time for buses that are meant to come every 6 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we got this other bus that dropped us off down past Old Street Roundabout and then had to walk from there to here. So it took about an hour and a half to get from Camden to here. And it would have been faster to walk.
Yeah, but buses in London, I mean, even pre-COVID, I didn't really like buses in London because it doesn't take much. God, apologies. This is probably the most boring intro to our podcast ever. Just us whinging about London traffic, or London transport. But it doesn't take much in London for the traffic to just get completely snarled up and come to a standstill. And most suburbs, or whatever whatever term you want to use, don't have space for separate bus lanes. So buses just have to share the road with all the other vehicles, and it's just chaos. So I didn't like buses before COVID. And then since COVID, I've just found buses to be like, I just feel like every time I go on a bus, I get sick. Like, it's just so packed. I'll still go on the tube and stuff, but I won't. I just try and avoid buses as much as possible.
So anyway, that's why my nose, it was red. It's starting to warm up a bit now. It's because I was outside and it was so cold. And as you were saying, I've just been on vacation. I was in Gran Canaria for 8 nights. Mm. And it was so lovely and warm there. I mean, every day the temperature was either 22 to 24. It was sunny, ocean breezes, just absolutely gorgeous. And to arrive back in London to the dreariest, bone-chillingly grey, damp weather. Yeah. It's just not interesting to me in the slightest.
And I was just talking to my colleague at work about this today, because my colleague had lived in Canada previously. Yeah. And we were just saying there's something about London. Like in Canada, it can get to 20 below. But it just doesn't feel as cold, because when it gets below a certain temperature, there's no moisture in the air. Like it's a dry cold. And so, you'll go out and you'll feel the cold on your skin, but it just doesn't sort of penetrate. It doesn't affect you in the same way. Whereas London, it doesn't even have to be that, like on paper, it wouldn't look that cold. It might be like 8 degrees in London. And you think, well, that's not too bad. But when it's just so damp and cold, it's just, it's so vile.
Well, I also obviously switched my heating off while I was away. And the apartment it was absolutely freezing when I came in.
Like an ice box.
And it's taking like a day to feel warm again, like a house, because, it gets chilled through the walls. And it takes a long time for it to heat up again and to maintain a level of warmth. So it's finally getting there after a day of being back. But
so tell me about your holiday, because I haven't really spoken to you about it, and you just got back yesterday. So tell me about Gran Canaria. No, Gran Canaria? Is that where you were?
Yeah, Gran Canaria. I mean, how would you say that in a Spanish pronunciation? Gran Canaria?
Gran Canaria.
So it's one of the islands that make up the Canary Islands, or Las Canarias. And I don't know how long it's been part of Spain, but obviously when conquistadors or invaders or travelers were going from Europe to the Americas, or the New World as they called it, that was one of the stopovers, right? Because it was, I don't know how long it would take to sail from Spain or Portugal to the Canaries. I mean, from the UK, it's a 4-hour flight, so that gives you some sort of idea of the distance, and it's off the coast of northwest Africa, so the sort of West Saharan side of Africa. And so the weather is genuinely quite warm all year round. And it can get scorchingly hot in the summer, but it's quite a maintained warmth throughout the year.
Well, it's it's moderated by the ocean, isn't it? It doesn't,
it generally doesn't go above 30. It can rarely. It can have like outliers, but it's normally up to about 28, 29. And then, I was there now. I mean, is it winter yet? Is it actually?
Yeah.
When does winter start?
Well, I think it depends. What is it? What do they say? Is it not meteorological winter? Is it meteorological winter? I think starts on the 1st of December. And no, I don't know what I'm talking about. Is it? Yeah, actually, no, maybe, yeah. I think meteorological winter starts on the 1st of December, but maybe winter proper, or whatever the correct term is, actually doesn't start until the 21st of December. So actually, I suppose it's still technically autumn. I don't know. As you know, we don't research anything on this podcast. Well, we do sometimes, but
it feels like winter here. I mean, it feels incredibly cold. But there it was. I mean, for it to be winter or almost winter, and for it to be 24 degrees and sunny, it's incredible. Of course, all of the swimming pools and the ocean, being the Atlantic, were freezing. Like,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
They don't have swimming pools or anything?
No, I think if you stay, a lot of the accommodation on Gran Canaria, like in Las Palmas or Maspalomas, it's very cheap and cheerful. It's seen as a real budget holiday destination for people.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can stay in some resorts that have heated pools, but they're much more expensive. There are even water parks there that I've read reviews thinking, oh, that would be fun to go to a water park, and people saying just do not go here between these months and these months because the water is so cold.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's weird because it's so lovely, and the beaches are gorgeous, like golden sand. In Maspalomas, there are the famous sand dunes, and it's stunning. I mean, it looks like you're in the Saharan desert, and it's like a desert scape down that southern part of the island. There's lots of beautiful cacti and palm trees everywhere. Like, I've never seen so many palm trees. Do you know what's weird as well? There's a whole bunch of Australian plants there.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I mean, if it's an arid part of the world, then yeah, that would make sense. Well, like
but that must be from plants, a long time ago, right?
Well, what kind of Australian plants?
Well, there were bottle brush. I don't know the Latin or the name for it, but the bottle brush tree or plant.
Callistemon.
Okay. There were a lot of very, very large Moreton Bay fig trees.
Oh, yeah. And
I read about it online. I thought, well, maybe they're native to like both parts of the world. And I read, and it's like, no, it's actually from Queensland.
Yeah.
And it was brought over.
Well, the Canary Islands have got a very rich botanical history, in part because of, like you were saying before, it was a very significant part of the sort of trade route, if you like, from the Americas. But I would imagine, at when Spain or when Europe was conquering the world, and I know we talked about that in last week's episode, didn't we? About or two episodes ago about the use of the term conquering. I don't say that in a sort of a celebratory way, but when they were going around the world and forming their colonies and stuff, it was a really important part on the trade route. So I'd imagine that's how a lot of these plants came into existence in the Canary Islands. And it's also a very, very good climate. It's a perfect climate for a lot of the world's plants, not too hot, not too cold. I don't think they get any frost at sea level in the Canary Islands. So yeah, it would be a very...
And in there were a lot of nopales, the cacti from Mexico that people eat. And we was talking to a guy down there that Hill knows, who said, oh, yeah, they're native from here. And I said, no, they're not.
No.
And I read about it online, and they were actually brought over hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I mean, with the travel and trade and colonization that we're talking about. So a lot of people grew up there, and even going back generations, think that those cacti, nopales, have always been there, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with a lot.
I know that a lot of other plants have also sort of escaped cultivation in the Canary Islands and have established themselves. So that, that I suppose you would, unless you sort of research it or plant botanical history well, or where certain groups of plants are from in the world, then you would probably think there's an Australian, no, actually I think it's a New Zealand tree fern as well that's escaped cultivation in the Canary Islands and is now got a self-sustaining population in different parts of the islands and stuff. So yeah.
And when I was reading about the nopales and where they're from, I found a story from about 8 years ago online where like local chefs or high-end chefs in the Canary Islands were attempting to get diners to embrace nopales as a food. So it shows you that they obviously are not an ancient crop there, because they've been a food for people in what is now known as Mexico for a very, very long time, right? Like they've been an ancient food stuff. So it shows if it's just a relatively new modern type of ingredient that people were trying to encourage people to get used to being on menus. It mustn't have been an indigenous species to the island or to those islands. But in the middle of Gran Canaria, there is a mountain called Pico de las Nieves. And we went on a little bus tour that went up into the mountains and took us to the lookout. And it was cooler up there, but it wasn't cold. I mean, you could still have been in a T-shirt. And we asked the tour guide, like, why is it called Peak of Snow?
Peak of Snow, yeah.
And she said, well, yeah, but before global warming, it used to get snow up there.
Really?
And she said that's where they got the water for the island. So now they're in crisis because it hasn't snowed for so long. Like she said, like, I don't know if she said decades or a couple of decades.
Wow, okay.
But she said all of the dams and water reservoirs that were on the island that used to catch all the snow runoff, snow melt, they're all dry.
Wow.
So there's a couple of maybe like wells, or what do you call it, an underground source of water? Like
springs.
Yeah, she used another word, but she said they've had to really invest in desalination. Water bores maybe, but yeah, they're investing in desalination of the ocean because they're just running out of water, and there are so many hotels and tourist things that rely on water.
Did you find, you go some places in the world and I don't know, like you don't really notice the impact of tourism much. It just sort of seems to fit in seamlessly. But then you go to other places and you can really see, and it's horrible because you really feel like you're contributing to a problem. Like when you see how tourism is actually really not doing any favors for the area, for the landscape, or
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of wilderness on the island. There's a lot of it undeveloped. So when you drive, say, from Las Palmas to Maspalomas, so the north to the south, it's only an hour on a bus.
Okay.
It's a small island. And there's a lot of empty space, but there's also, a lot of development and a lot of wind farms. So but I don't know if that would be there with or without tourism. Who knows? I mean, there could just be an industry for the island. And I don't know if there are wind farms on all of the Canary Islands or if Gran Canaria is responsible for that. But when you get down to Maspalomas, there's a lot of these cheap, maybe 6, 7, 8-story hotels. There's nothing higher than that in Maspalomas. But they were all built from the 60s onwards. So there was this huge explosion of cheap hotels in the 60s and 70s. And it looks like that. It looks like you're in a 1970s sitcom and it doesn't help that everybody is of a certain age and Northern European. So you've got people tons of Germans, tons of English people. I mean, one of the main beaches down there is called Playa del Inglés.
Yeah.
And it just is a weird vibe. It's got this really old, like Abigail's Party style vibe.
Yeah,
It just looks old fashioned.
I do really want to go more than anything, just for the plants, for the botanic history and the botanical gardens and stuff like that. I'm really, really keen to go for that reason. But yeah, it does sound like it's a bit over touristed, and I don't know.
But there are parts of it that you can go to that aren't as severe. So, I mean, obviously Las Palmas and Maspalomas are just nothing but tourists. I mean, it's just inundated. Las Palmas felt more like a European city to me. Like walking around, I could have been in Madrid or Barcelona. Like it had the look and feel and vibe.
Okay.
The accent of everybody there was like Hill. I said to Hill, this doesn't sound like Spanish.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it sounds
different.
like South American Spanish.
Yeah.
And that is apparently a knock-on effect from the centuries of people using it as a stop-off point. So people would come back from the Americas with that new accent and then stop and settle in the Canaries. And then that's how the accent developed to be more similar to Central and South American. And it's just a bit of a weird vibe because obviously the islands were colonized. And there were people that lived there.
I was going to ask about it because I mean it's part of Africa. I mean, as a in terms of continents, it's just off the coast of Africa. So I was going to ask what the pre-Hispanic history of the islands was. Did you find out much about that?
Yeah, well, why do you think the Canary Islands are called the Canary Islands?
I don't know.
But what do you think is haven't you heard that thing? It's about dogs.
What? I have no idea what you're talking
about. People think it's about that there were dogs that lived there and that it was named after a breed of dogs. Have you heard that's the most commonly held belief?
I've never heard that before.
Well, apparently there were a group of like different people on different islands. So there were different indigenous, or I don't know if they were indigenous to the island or if they came from somewhere else before that. But the original inhabitants of Gran Canaria were the I think it's pronounced Guanches.
Okay.
But they arrived to the Canary Islands. Like obviously they didn't. They had to come from somewhere. Like all humans came from somewhere. But they were believed in the first millennium BC. So what's that? Like what?
Okay. So over 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, and that is believed that they were likely descendants of a group of people from North Africa.
Okay.
And from what I can tell, there is no direct remnant or like lineage to those groups of people anymore. I think it was complete. I might have this wrong, but from what I could read while I was over there, that it was like that group of people were completely eradicated or killed or like somehow removed from the existence of the islands.
Yeah,
I know that when. What's that?
I was going to say, so it's like not like there's any sort of surviving cultural, surviving culture that you could see visibly anyway.
No, and so the culture that is there is very Spanish. So we went to a little town in the mountains called San Mateo, and it was very, very typical Spanish countryside town. And they weren't doing it for show. It wasn't, oh, let's dress it up like a Disney-fied version for tourists, because there weren't a ton of tourists in this town. It was locals going to have their lunch in the square, and there was because it was Christmas, there was a band playing Christmas songs and then other types of Spanish folk songs, and elderly couples were out dancing together just in the town square. It was very authentic, but it was authentically Spanish, and it was at some point imported to those islands and developed. I suppose it's kind of developed weirdly concurrently, but also separately to Spain. Like, I wondered, because Gran Canaria is super gay, right? It's like a really gay destination. Yeah. Las Palomas, I've never seen so much gay stuff and so many gay people in one place on the planet. Like there's a whole shopping center, like an entertainment shopping center called the Jumbo Center. It's a gay shopping center.
Oh, I've heard about this, yeah.
It's maybe about 4 or 5 levels high. It's an outside shopping mall. And there were so many gay bars in this shopping mall and restaurants, like dozens and dozens of restaurants, loads of gay bars, and even like gay cruising bars, like gay sex bars. Yeah, everyone's walking around it. Like everyone's walking around, even like the old straight cis German and Icelandic couples were like walking around and looking at bottle openers in the shape of dicks, and everything was like really very odd. Like it was like, and it looks like from the 1970s as well. And there were like swingers clubs, so nightclubs and bars and cinemas for like couples who from Iceland and Germany who want to go and swing down in Gran Canaria. It's just got a very old-fashioned vibe to it, but the weather was beautiful, and the architecture in some of it is very odd looking because it was all built mostly in the 60s and 70s. So if you went to Madrid or Barcelona, there'd be a lot of ancient, very old, historic architecture and buildings. Yeah. In Maspalomas, everything looks like it was built in my lifetime.
Well, wasn't it until... am I correct in thinking it wasn't that popular as a tourist destination until maybe the last sort of 30 years or so?
Well, I think when I read about the hotel that we were staying in, I read about this idea somebody had in the 1960s to turn it into a holiday destination.
Right.
And it was in the 60s and 70s that it exploded. Like this idea won some sort of competition or design competition to start building purpose-built resort towns. And I think there might have been a rule about not going above a certain height because every building is exactly the same height, about 7 stories high.
Okay.
But it just has got a weird vibe.
Would you go back? Would you go back to Gran Canaria, or would you like to see some of the other islands?
I would like to see some of the other islands, like Lanzarote, Fuerteventura, I think is one of the other ones.
Tenerife.
Oh, and that's another thing. When we were up on the tallest part of Gran Canaria, you could see the tallest part of Tenerife. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, there were lots of clouds in between, so I couldn't see the ocean. I could just see this other peak, like obviously a long way away. But there are passenger ferries that go between the islands as well.
Okay.
And so you could, but they're not that cheap. I think it was about €50 to ride a 1-hour ferry across to
just one way.
One way, but it was very cheap for residents of the island.
Oh, right.
So there's a price for tourists and a price for residents, which is nice.
I don't mind that. Yeah.
No, but I would definitely like to go back. Maspalomas I found a bit sad. You know, when you go somewhere that is just a tourist destination and there's nothing else to it, it is a little bit depressing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like that in sort of places like Surfers Paradise on the Gold Coast. It's just, there's nothing of real sort of value or worth there. It's just people who are going there to have a holiday, have fun, get, pissed or party or I don't know. It just, I don't know, there's nothing. I mean, it depends who you are, I suppose, but for me, there's nothing that really appeals in that sort of thing. I'm much more interested in, natural landscapes, plants, that sort of thing, rather than, nightclubs or tourist infrastructure.
But you can have that on Gran Canaria.
Yeah. So I want to go.
What I would have liked to have done is, I don't know how to drive, so I was a bit limited, but there are towns all around the different parts of the coast of the island that look absolutely stunning. And sort of towards the northwest of the island, there is a cacti botanic garden, which is apparently the largest in Europe. And I don't know how I was in Europe there, but that's how it billed itself.
Yeah, no, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
I was in Africa.
I know, it's strange, isn't it, how it's considered Europe when it's clearly not.
Do I get to say that I've been to Africa now?
I don't know.
Because it's part of the African, what do you call like the continental plate, or it's part of that. Like, it's part of the landmass of, it's divided by ocean now, but it's on that tectonic plate or continental plate. So I don't know if I'm really allowed to say I've been to Africa properly.
I don't know. I mean, technically,
but to me, I think why I enjoyed Las Palmas a little more, even though it wasn't as warm. Like, it was warmer down in Maspalomas, but Las Palmas felt more culturally enriching to me. Like, Las Palmas had record stores. There's like a vegan. Somebody who follows me on Instagram wrote to me and said, "Oh, I can see you're in Gran Canaria. Would you like to come to our vegan social justice center? We run it to help migrants who are moving to Gran Canaria, and it's a vegan cafe as well." And I'd already left that city, so I couldn't.
Oh.
And so, there's stuff like that. Like, it's just a bit. It just had a bit more of a vibe.
Stuff is happening.
Yeah, and I went to a bookstore in Las Palmas, and I bought this vampire novel, and it's in Spanish. So this is going to be my first attempt.
Can't read. Noctambulo. Okay.
Reading.
Nightwalker?
What's that?
Is that Nightwalker?
I don't know. I suppose. I never even thought of that. But the author of this, Miguel, can you read his name?
Aguiralde. I can't do that.
Aguiralde?
I can't do the rolling of the R's properly in Spanish, but anyway.
But you can see there's a picture of him on the inside cover.
Oh, yeah.
He is a Canarian author. He used to live on Gran Canaria. I think he lives on Tenerife or Lanzarote now. I'm not sure. But he is a primary teacher or a teacher who also writes novels. And so I read about this book a few months ago when I knew I was going. I wanted to see if there was any vampire lore to do with the Canary Islands. And he's got this book about a vampire that lives on Gran Canaria, this novel.
Right up your alley.
I'm very excited to read it.
So you can read that in Spanish?
Yeah, I had a look at it, and I think I could do it if I have like a translated device next to me. I think, because I read the first line and I was like, oh, I know what the first line says. It's like, but in the bookstore, they had a section for Canarian authors, like local authors from the islands, which was really nice. And the person in the bookstore was so excited that someone had come in and asked specifically for one of their local authors from the island. And the bookstore was amazing. Like they had so much stuff in there. But yeah, I definitely go back.
I love a bookstore. I love going to bookstores in other cities, other countries. It's always so interesting to see what it's like. That's probably, you know, along with botanical gardens and stuff, that's probably one of my favorite things to do.
And Las Palmas had like just recently had a their international film festival that happened. I think it happened in November, and the opening film was the new version of Nosferatu. Did you go and see Wicked the other night?
Yes, I did.
And do you have thoughts that you would like to share with everybody?
I do. I have thoughts and feelings and emotions about it. I thought the performances were very good. I thought Cynthia's performance was amazing. I thought Ariana's performance was okay, but I love Kristin Chenoweth, so I never saw Wicked well, actually that's not true. I saw Wicked on stage in Mexico, but it was in Spanish, so my comprehension of it wasn't as good, and even the songs are in Spanish, and so I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I love Kristin Chenoweth, so I always think of Glinda as Kristin Chenoweth, and Kristin Chenoweth is in the film, as is Idina Menzel, but just for a short one-song thing.
Adele Dazeem.
Adele Dazeem. But I don't know. For a start, I have to say I don't tend to like musicals anyway. I went because it was a free screening, but I don't like musicals that much. I don't think the songs in Wicked are that good. Like, I know a lot of people love them, but I just don't think they're that good.
Controversial statement the other day.
Yeah.
Because I've seen Wicked a few times. Like I've seen it twice in London, and I saw it with you in Mexico. I think Defying Gravity is a very good song. I think it's transformational for the show. Like,
yeah, I think it's a song that has some good moments, but I don't think it's a good song in it.
It has
as a whole
that trick in it where she does the war cry, which is iconic, and it transforms that character to a whole other stratosphere that it would not have gone to.
Yeah,
and all the other songs are just so beyond mediocre.
Oh, they're really dull,
especially
and forgettable
in comparison to that. And like Popular's fun, but it's not a great song. It's just
and I have to say, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I'm pretty sure I've seen, you know, on YouTube or something like that over the years, I'm sure I've seen video footage of Kristin Chenoweth doing Popular. Like they must have, you know, performed it at award ceremonies, or maybe some of the Broadway original cast performances were filmed, but I've seen Kristin Chenoweth doing it, and she's so good. You know, Kristin Chenoweth is brilliant, and Ariana,
no one could touch her. Yeah, and
I don't know, Ariana just didn't quite. I don't know, she just didn't quite hit the character on the head like Kristin did, and so I didn't like it that much. Yeah.
I think Kristin Chenoweth is such a unique performer of like unrivaled. It's not just the skill or the tools, but her charisma is unmatched. That she has made that role almost unplayable for anybody else.
Yeah, completely.
Whereas like I've seen other people do like Elphaba, like I've seen it. People do Elphaba on the West End here in London, and they were great. Like I didn't think, I mean, I will always wish it was Idina. I will always wish I could see Idina Menzel in that role. But I didn't think that these people were lacking. Whereas I have felt that with other Glindas. I have, because I think Kristin Chenoweth, like Idina Menzel is amazing, but Kristin Chenoweth is on another level.
And like, you get that sometimes, don't you? With an actor gets a role, and it was, you know, I'm not talking about like some kind of God-given destiny or anything like that, but it's like kind of the role that just defines them. Like it's the role they were sort of born to play, if you like. And I feel like Kristin, I haven't seen Kristin in that many other things. I remember she was at, what was that show she had? Pushing Daisies? Is that what it was called? And I've seen her in a couple of other little cameos and stuff. I haven't seen her in much, but it's just, she just completely embodied that character. And she just Yeah, I feel like, and I suppose that's down to good casting, isn't it? When an actor can tap into something that is pre-existing and portray that in a character, and I think Kristin probably did that with Glinda, and because it was, I don't know the history of Wicked actually, but because Kristin, I think, was the first person to play Glinda on Broadway, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I think she probably did have a big hand in creating that role and what it became. So yeah, it just didn't quite hit it for me. I mean, it was good. The film, it was visually very impressive. The sets, the costumes, the makeup, everything was very good. But yeah, it just.
So I haven't gone to see it because I don't know if I can deal with the length of it and then it only being half of the story.
I know.
Like, I don't know why they couldn't have just made it one movie. Obviously, they want to milk more money out of it.
Yeah.
But it's when you go to see the stage play, it's not even that the stage musical. It's not even as long as this movie is. That's only telling half the story.
I know. It's they've they clearly just need to make more money from it. But
did you feel that it was just too long?
Yes. Yeah. It really was. It just kind of, I did start looking at my watch in the last 45 minutes, just thinking, oh, come on, we kind of, because we know the story sort of anyway, you do just think, oh, come on, get on with it.
Do you feel like I've read some criticisms of it that because of the dialogue that's interspersed into the songs, it loses a lot of the pacing that the musical has, or the I went to say gravity, but the emotional force of those songs is like, especially Defying Gravity, like it already had a little bit of talking in it, but now they've even broken it up more, right? In the movie.
So when you start with songs that aren't that strong to begin with, and then you start breaking them up and interspersing them with dialogue, it and I thought it wouldn't be such a bad thing, would it, to write some new songs? You can still keep Defying Gravity and you can keep Popular, but why not write some new songs? And I don't know, maybe they did, but I don't know. None of them seemed particularly good to me. But listen, I know I'm just conscious of the time because this is the episode that's coming out the day before Christmas Day, and I do feel like we need to just address our shared hatred of Christmas, and just go in on that because where I work, we have to do a lot of Christmas stuff, like we sell Christmas trees, and I despise it with every fiber of my being. And I'm so anti-Christmas, but it's like you have no choice in the culture that we live in. You have no choice but to just kind of accept it. But it's so problematic. So I just thought I wanted to spend just a little 15 minutes or so just ranting about Christmas and telling our listeners and viewers why we despise Christmas so much. So I don't know if you want to go first, but...
Well, all I can think of when I think about Christmas is because it means nothing to me. But all I can think of, and I was doing this all the time in Gran Canaria because there were Christmas decorations everywhere, is that scene in Cecil B. Demented where Alicia Witt's character is talking about how she was abused by her entire family on Christmas Day. And if you don't know, I mean, this movie is a dark, incredibly dark comedy. And she's like saying, jingle balls, my grandma screamed. And I just kept hearing it over and over in my head. Everywhere I went and I saw all these decorations, I just kept hearing Alicia Witt going, jingle balls, jingle. Because, her voice is very unique, the way she talks. And I could hear it in her accent and her voice, her affectation, saying jingle balls, jingle balls.
Well, what's funny is when you were just saying that all you could think of, I thought you were going to reference another John Waters film, Polyester.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was the one you were going to bring up, but instead you said Cecil B. Demented. No, it's Polyester, isn't it? where she doesn't get the shoes she wants.
No, it's female trouble.
Oh, female trouble. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she sort of tears down the
I better
Christmas
get those
tree.
cha-cha
Better get
heels.
those cha-cha heels, and then the Christmas tree's over, and the mother's in the
Well,
sort of background. Not on Christmas, not on
not on
Christmas.
Christmas,
I
Dawn.
thought that's what you were going to.
No, for some reason I've just had jingle balls
Uh,
going
well,
over and
there
over in my
there
head.
goes our content warning for the beginning of the episode. Then, but yeah, Christmas, I find it just so problematic on so many levels. It's a religious holiday, and yet it's just become completely taken over by capitalist and consumerist agendas. And I just find it so distasteful that, particularly in developed nations and, quote unquote, first world countries, we already exist in such a bubble of privilege, living in these countries. And, I know there are there are lots of people, lots of caveats to that. But generally speaking, we do live in such a state of privilege in a lot of developed nations. And then we spend money, like, I don't even know, billions of pounds or dollars or whatever currency you want, on shit, like on actual just rubbish, like plastic waste, like stuff that will get used once and then get thrown away and go into landfill. And even if it does get recycled, like, it just shouldn't exist in the first place. I find it so distasteful that, I've got no issue, no beef, so to speak, with religious holidays. Of course, people are entitled to celebrate that, but to the fact that this consumerist orgy has become, somehow synonymous with something that is supposed to be a religious festival, which is about goodwill.
Do you think you have good memories of Christmas from being a child? Do you have,
Yeah. I mean,
like,
it was fun as a
what
kid.
was good about it?
What was good was having time off school, getting presents, and having, a nice family meal. That was fun. And I was just trying to show my Christmas
Oh yeah.
jumper. Um, that part of Christmas was nice, and that's what I wish it was in a way. I wish it wasn't, well, except I did love. I mean, what kid doesn't love presents, right? But I do like the idea of, at the sort of coldest, darkest time of the year, when we have like the shortest days. I do like the idea of getting together with loved ones and, having nice food and having a good time. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just all the like obscene gift giving and wasting of money and resources that goes
I
along
don't
with it.
like I don't like organized things. Like, I don't like where people feel they have to do it because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
Christmas to me is like that. And it's similar
yeah.
why I don't celebrate birthdays.
Mm,
I just don't like where people think that, oh, well, it's Christmas, we've got to do this. Just shut up and get it over and done with. Because
yeah,
people often go and hang out with people they don't even like because they feel like indebted, or that they feel like
yeah,
it's something they must do. But,
yeah.
talking about like the coldest and darkest time of the year. I mean, when I grew up, it was the hottest time of the
Well,
year
yeah,
at
yeah.
Christmas time. And I can remember our family would try and have some, I suppose, remnants of like a European Christmas. So you would have, like, I suppose, meat, turkey, or whatever. Like, this is well before I was vegan, but everything would be served cold.
Hmm.
So you wouldn't have a hot dinner. And so you'd have
Hmm.
salad and, I suppose, seafood if you ate seafood. And we'd often go to the beach on Christmas Day. And it doesn't have that same romantic connotations that, like, you were describing, like twinkling lights and like staying rugged up and warm. It was completely different for me growing up. So I
Yeah.
can see the magic coming over to Europe when I was an adult. I can see the magic, especially if it snows around Christmas time. It's very evocative, but it's
Hmm.
all, like you said, it's all been we've been socialized into believing that we need to spend money to make it special. And it's just very...
I think you and I have sort of, over the years, we've been vocal about that, and we've sort of, I don't know, trained or whatever, I don't know if that's the right word, but we've trained our sort of family, friends or whatever to not give us presents, because that's the other thing I used to hate, like the idea that you have to buy presents for someone, whether it's something they need or want, is completely out of the equation. It's just this gift giving, and I think, if you've got money to spare for that, then put it, I don't need some plastic, the kind of the shit that you get in offices as well, like the Secret Santa stuff, where and just, it's all just plastic rubbish. You'll be like, okay, I've got £5 to spend on someone, I'll go and buy some fucking just piece of shit, like honestly, like some stupid mug, or normally it's not even that, it's just something plastic, which is just
like
going to get
reindeer antlers or
something.
or
like learn to juggle kit, or just waste, just absolute fucking waste, and it just drives me crazy. So
I'm happy to say to people, this is why I don't participate. Like I've sometimes had to do things for work, such as like run an event with a restaurant for Christmas.
Yeah.
But even at that, I've sometimes stood up and said, "Oh, welcome to this." As somebody who doesn't celebrate Christmas myself, like I'll make it known, because I don't want to even be seen to be a party to it, like to any form of it. But if it's what people do, for me, it's important to give people that option to do it in a vegan way, so they don't feel like compromised, or they can do it in a more compassionate way, or they don't.
And that's a part of, I suppose, it's not even the main part of the decision to kind of opt out of Christmas, the vegan angle, because that's the other thing, of course, is if you did want to celebrate Christmas and you were going to do that with family or friends that aren't vegan, then you're going to have to sit there and just watch a lot of dead animals being shoveled into people's mouths, which is not fun at the best of times. And so, it is nice for vegans to have somewhere to go that is completely free of animal products. But again, it just ties into sort of the underlying hatred of the celebration of Christmas, or the inherent hypocrisy of it, because it's supposed to be, it's billed as this time of peace and goodwill. And how is it showing peace and goodwill to anyone in the world by killing more animals, by buying cheap plastic tat that ends up in landfill? Like, what has that got to do with goodwill? I feel like Christmas gift buying should just be banned. It's just, if you've got money to spend, give it to charity.
But also, what does the term goodwill mean? I mean,
well, exactly.
Are we showing goodwill to the people of Gaza? Are we like what? Goodwill for who? Like just the people in your direct vicinity for those 48 hours?
Yeah,
because the rest of the year you're going to fight with them, or
it's completely hypocritical.
People around the world who don't even have a home to live in, or who are being bombed daily, or I just think it's such a nonsense notion, and like it's such a distraction from reality, and reality is pretty fucking awful for a lot of people on the planet, and that if anyone's got money to spare, they should be putting it to help redress those disadvantages and those oppressions, not like you said, like buying a fucking reindeer onesie from like TK Maxx or something. It's just so distasteful to me. Like I hate it so much. And
same.
Like if you want to do something nice for someone, do it when the mood takes you, not when you're told you have to do it. And do things that are meaningful to people. And I don't know, it's awful to me.
I find it just so distasteful, offensive.
Did you know in Mexico that they don't celebrate the family meal and everything is on the 24th, not on the 25th?
Yeah, and a lot of countries have that as the sort of the tradition or whatever, that it's the 24th. But I've had a few solstice parties in the past, just to sort of get together with friends and have drink and something nice to eat on the shortest day of the year, and I like that, but I absolutely abhor the enforced, almost expected buying of gifts for people.
Do you know what it also ties into for me a lot, is the feeling of you should feel guilty if you don't see your family. Like at Christmas time, you should make the effort to make amends or see your family. And my family are horrible. Like, not all of them. Like I'm close to some of my family still, but my parents especially were, I've said it before on here, abusive or lacking in care for their children. I mean, one of my most vivid Christmas memories is my alcoholic drunk father, who's now dead, so he can't sue me for saying this, coming in and assaulting and abusing my stepmother, who is also dead, so she can't even back me up with this story, and being violent and abusive and drunk. And then the next day, after he went on a rampage in the night and smashed the presents and beat my stepmother and hit some of us children, the next day we had to go in and tell him Merry Christmas and kiss him on the cheek and say we loved him. And then we all had to go to my stepmother's parents' house for Christmas, and she had a black eye with makeup on it. And we all had to go there and sit. And we were so traumatized from the violence. And that, to me, it's just like...
Peace and goodwill, babes.
Yeah, that's the exact, situation. And I'm not saying that everyone's situation is that extreme.
Yeah.
But it's like this pretense that's coded, and this... kind of like you need to make sure everything seems happy and that you're a happy family at Christmas time, no matter what else has happened in the year. And it's just like, I'm not interested in doing that. And so I tie a lot of those feelings around my distaste for Christmas with the actual trauma of Christmas.
Yeah.
Jingle balls, my grandmother screamed.
I mean, I don't have those sort of awful memories of Christmas. Like I said, it was quite a nice time of year for me as a kid, but just the older I've gotten, the more distasteful I find it. And I don't know. It's.
Did you believe that Santa Claus was real when you were little?
Oh, when I was young, yeah, definitely. Up until my mid-20s. No, I don't know. I try and just avoid the world on Christmas Day.
What do you do on Christmas Day?
I'll just go for a nice long walk if it's not pissing with rain. I'll just go for a nice long walk. I used to sometimes cook something special, like a little nut roast or a little vegan turkey something. I don't know. But even now I'm just like, I don't care about that even,
Do you know one of the best recent Christmas days I had was, I think 2 years ago, when Hill went to Mexico to be with his family 2 or 3 years ago. And I was living in Soho, and I took one of the Barclays bikes or Boris bikes or whatever they're called. I don't know what, like Santander bikes. I don't know what those...
I don't know what they're called anymore.
And I rode around down to St. Paul's, because famously there's no public transport in London on Christmas Day, and there's very little traffic. And so it's easier to cycle. So I cycled all around. I went to the cinema to see the Whitney Houston biopic. And then
the cinema was open on Christmas Day? In
central London, in Leicester Square,
okay. Yeah.
And then I went home and I cooked vegan fish finger tea, like supper, and I watched reruns of Robot Wars on YouTube, and it was so nice. It was just a day where I did exactly what I wanted to do without any idea of I owe anyone my time, or I owe anyone belief in a ritual, or in a family thing or anything. And it was so much fun. And I had a slushie and popcorn at the cinema. I cried at the tacky Whitney movie. And then I had fish finger tea and sandwich and Robot Wars. It was just everything that I wanted to do.
I just had a flashback then. I can't believe this story hasn't come up on the podcast already, but when you were talking about riding the Boris bikes around, I just remembered that Christmas Day when we had gone to stay the night. I mean, there isn't enough time to get into it now. we'd gone to stay the night over on that canal boat in East London, and then
Horrible.
the next day was Christmas Day, and so we had to ride bikes back to our flat in West London. I mean, that's a whole another episode, I think, about with the shit-eating swans and
Shit-eating swans, and someone vomited in that apartment where Ian was living.
Yeah. Anyway, let's save that for another episode. But God,
Well, to wrap up, what's your happiest? If you had to pick one happy Christmas memory of all time that you can remember.
I don't know. You know what my memory is like? I can't remember what happened last week. I would just say collectively my sort of early childhood memories with both my grandmas there, and my aunt, and the family together, and that was sort of a warm and fuzzy kind of feeling. But as an adult, probably the ones in Australia when it was lovely and warm, and maybe when my first Christmas in Australia when I was living with Sally in Darlinghurst, and we went to Sally's auntie's place in North Sydney, and she had a pool, and it was just it was such for somebody who's grown up in Europe, it was such a refreshing way to experience Christmas in the middle of summer in someone's pool. Yeah. What about you?
You felt like you were Kylie Minogue. In Neighbours. I don't think I don't think I have a best.
Just fish fingers and robot wars. Vegan fish fingers and robot wars.
I think that is like a non-Christmas memory because it just happened to be on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
But I don't have any other good memories as a child that I think that was nice. I look back at all of that with sadness.
Yeah.
Would you have a worst Christmas memory? Like what's?
Well, I mean, maybe the shit-eating swans debacle. Which,
I mean, it was funny, but it was quite awful.
It was quite awful at the time. It's funny now, like looking back, but at the time it was pretty fucking awful. But yeah, well, that's a bit of a teaser. We'll have to get into that story. Maybe next week. In next week's episode, we can tell the story of the shit-eating swans.
Maybe that can be an episode where we've decided why we both don't drink as much or at all like we used to. Maybe that can tie into like alcohol stories.
I am looking forward to having a little tawny port.
Oh my God.
Over Christmas, but I'm having it as a rule for when I finish when I've submitted my tax return. I can reward myself with a glass of tawny port.
Isn't it weird that like as much as I used to drink, and you've seen me drink more than most people have seen me drink, that I just don't drink anymore.
I've seen you drink more than most people.
Like most people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking the other day, like Hill said to me, "Oh, would you ever have a drink again?" And I thought to myself, I don't think so. Like, I just don't think I would. Like, maybe if I get to be really old and I retire and I'm living in Mexico, I might start up on the mezcal as like an evening sip, something like that. Just to take the edge off being an old dude. But I just can't trust myself with it. Like I can't. It's not what I get out of it is not worth the gamble of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go have 1 pint. I would have 8 pints.
See, whereas it's alcohols. I've had issues with other substances, but alcohol's not really been one of them. I can sort of take it or leave it. I'll have a glass or maybe a couple of glasses and I'll be like, yeah, that'll do. Like I'm not that.
Tawny port, it's your only vice, Sue.
Tawny port or ginger. I do like a ginger wine. But yeah, I'll do that only once I've submitted my tax return. That's my incentive to get it done.
I think if I was back in Australia, I could be on the lemon, lime, and bitters, which I think has like very, very tiny amounts of alcohol,
negligible amount. Yeah,
and to me that's a really nice drink, and it feels like you're being sociable, you're having like a little cocktail, and it's a lovely drink.
So if you're watching and you don't know what a lemon, lime, bitters is, I mean in Australia it's just called LLB. I can't even say it. LLB, and it's just lemonade. Bitters like Angostura bitters, lime cordial, and I think that's it. Lemon, lime, and bitters. I mean, it is what it says in the name, I suppose.
And you've got to say it with an Australian accent.
I'll have an LLB.
I've never heard anyone call it an LLB.
What?
I've only ever heard people say the full name.
LLB, Mayday.
Never heard it.
I think even
You're having a laugh.
What's that drink? Is it Bundaberg drink? One of the Australian drink brands. I think it might be Bundaberg. They make like pre-mixed LLB in a bottle. I don't know if it is Bundaberg, but one of those Australian drinks companies does. But yeah, LLB, Mayday. But sometimes, I mean, you have to know what you're doing with it, because I've ordered it at some places and they've said, look, I don't know what you're talking about, but we have all of those ingredients. But
yeah. Where, in the UK?
In the UK, yeah.
Oh, yeah, people have no concept of what it is.
But there are a lot of Australians working behind bars in London, particularly. So often you can get lucky ordering an LLB, but yeah, it can go quite awry if you don't get the proportions right.
Maybe if I ever move back to Australia, that might be my version of drinking again. Is
okay.
Like
Angostura bitters.
Having an LLB down the Sporties Tavern, Sportsman Hotel, I mean, in Brisbane.
Oh, I just saw the owner of the Sporties, owner/manager. He just he passed away recently. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'll have an LLB.
Is it Michael? I could be completely misremembering that. I think his name might have been Michael, but
no.
We should wrap up. But before we wrap up, I do, because as my manager of my music, Sean has been helping with me with my music, and he's creating like a spreadsheet with a new tab every week for things I need to do. And one of the things that he put on the spreadsheet this week is to mention in the podcast. So I'm doing it. So as soon as we finish recording, I'm going to mark it as a completed task on the spreadsheet. But to mention that my EP, which is called Addicted to Desire, is coming out on Spotify, on Apple Music, on all streaming platforms on the 5th of January. So I've got 2 singles out already, Empty Seat and Over Again, and there are 3 new songs coming out on the 5th of January called, one is called By My Side, one is called Earthquake, and the 5th one is called Raining in LA. So if you are on Spotify, please go to my, I'll put the link in the show notes. Please pre-save my album, because I believe that sort of helps Spotify to promote your release to new audiences. Please pre-save the album, EP. I shouldn't really call it an album. Please pre-save the EP and share it with your friends. And when it comes out on the 5th of January, please have a listen and let me know what you think.
You can put the links to the pre-save in the
show notes. You can also, if you just go to my profile on Instagram, Josh and the Jumpstarts, or if you go to joshandthejumpstarts.com, you can find the link there as well. But
and if you're watching this in time, you should come to a New Year's Eve party that Josh and I will be at in London, and Josh will be running the karaoke, and I might be DJing, I think. So
okay.
You come along to that. The link will be in my Instagram bio. So go to Fat Gay Vegan on Instagram and click the link in my bio, and there'll be a link to buy tickets. But come along if you want to hang out on New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So that's us for another episode.
Yeah. We'll be back in your feeds next week, and maybe we'll talk about the shit-eating swans. Until
then, I just want to say one last thing.
Yes.
Jingle balls to all who celebrate.
Not on Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Merry fucking Christmas, everyone.
No.
See you soon. Bye.